What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. It's time for this week's top 25, and we've got some changes at the top with Texas going down to Georgia. But other than that, not just a whole ton of a lot of movement, but let's go ahead and dive into it. At number 25 and 24, so both of these teams have a lot of losses, but they've only lost a good team, so that's why they're both in here for me. Both these teams pretty similar. 25 Louisville, 24 South Carolina. Again, they haven't really necessarily lost to anybody bad, but they do have a lot of losses. So that's why they're towards the bottom here. Might not make appearances in a lot of teams' top 25s, but if you were to ask me, who are the best 25 teams in the country, both these teams would definitely be in the conversation. Louisville, close losses to all the teams in the ACC that are above them right now. Close loss to Miami this week. And then as for South Carolina, dominated Oklahoma. Well, that's not just the most impressive win. It was a dominant performance nonetheless. Number 23, Navy. So they enter my top 25 for the first time. They have that win over Memphis, which looks better and better each week. They are still undefeated. They played Notre Dame this week. This is their chance. If they can win this game, they control their own destiny as far as the G5 college football playoff representative is concerned. So if they win this one, they're in the driver's seat, I think, even over Boise State. Number 22, speaking of Boise State, again, they only have that one loss to Oregon, which as of right now is probably the number one team in the country. And it was a close loss. So Boise State showed they can play with anybody, but they have been sort of close with some other teams. So that's why I'm a little skeptical on just how good Boise is. Number 21, Pitt. They are still undefeated to this point. Haven't really played anybody in ACC play that is considered a good team, but they're still undefeated. 20, Missouri. They still only have one loss, which means they're in pretty good shape going forward as far as college football playoff is concerned, but haven't really beat anybody of note. They did beat Vanderbilt in overtime, though. 19, Ole Miss. They have two losses, so they're not really controlling their own destiny, but two losses is going to get you into the playoff by the time the season's done. So I think they're in okay shape that you got to win out. 18, Alabama, similar situation. But they've got some issues though. Alabama lost to Tennessee. Since that first quarter against Georgia, they just haven't looked the same. And they've clearly got some issues going on in Alabama. Lost to Tennessee today or yesterday. And they're going to have to fix some things going forward if they want to make the playoff. I think they're one of the few teams that could lose three and make it just off of name recognition alone. I've said all along, I think Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas are the only teams that could make it with three losses just because of brand. And Alabama is slowly slipping. They've got some tough games left, so they're going to have to win out here. 17, Kansas State. They win once again. Now, again, their only loss so far is to BYU, but BYU did kind of manhandle them. So Kansas State still staying in the thick of things in the Big 12 race. 16, Illinois. They still only have one loss as well. That's to Penn State, and Penn State has looked good so far, so that's not a bad loss. Other than that, Illinois is doing what they need to do. 15, Indiana. So this is probably the biggest riser for me this week. They shocked me. They absolutely dominated Nebraska, and their quarterback is going to be out next week versus Washington, so that's going to make it a little more difficult. But Indiana, with how their schedule plays out, I think they can get in the playoff if they only lose that one game. But right now, they're in good shape. 14, SMU. Their only loss is to BYU in a close game. So SMU, I think, is legit. People kind of wrote them off early because of that loss to BYU, but it turns out that's not a bad loss, obviously. So SMU still undefeated in ACC play. And I don't know how the tiebreaker is going to work because all these ACC teams that are undefeated don't play each other. Pitt, SMU, Clemson, Miami, somehow they don't run into each other, so that's going to cause some issues. I don't know what the tiebreaker will be to make the championship. 13, Texas A&M. They get the job done versus Mississippi State. They are, as of right now, in the lead in the SEC. They do play LSU this week. Now, they haven't played anybody really competitive in SEC play so far, but LSU, that'll be a test for them for sure, with their only loss so far being at Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, at number 12, they get Navy this week. But besides that Northern Illinois loss, Notre Dame has looked good. And the good news for them is with the expanded playoff, you can afford that loss. While I don't like it, I would much rather a loss to Northern Illinois kind of end your season almost as far as playoff standards are concerned, because you shouldn't be able to lose to Northern Illinois and make the playoff, in my opinion. But Notre Dame is fine. I think besides that game, I think they're a pretty good team. Number 11, Tennessee. They got that big one over Alabama this week. Kind of a scare in a little bit. Nico went out, but he came back in. But big win there for Tennessee. And again, they're right in the thick of things in SEC play with one loss. Everybody's probably going to have one conference loss by the end, because right now I think it's LSU and A&M are the only teams without a loss, but they haven't really played anybody. Obviously, like the big dogs as far as Georgia and Alabama are concerned. I mean, Georgia and Texas, not Georgia and Alabama. But Tennessee has. All right, they've got that one over Alabama, so that's impressive. But as far as LSU and A&M, they're going to slowly dip down probably when they start playing some tougher teams. And number 10, Iowa State. They had a really close call against UCF, but they end up crawling out with the victory there, staying undefeated. Number 9, BYU. Again, their wins look more and more impressive as the year goes on because SMU, I think, like I said, is legit. They also have that dominant win over Kansas State. I think BYU's for real. Now, they eked one out against Oklahoma State, which going into the year would have been my pick in the Big 12. But BYU, Iowa State, as of right now, they're in the driver's seat in the Big 12. Number 8, Clemson. They kind of struggled at first against Virginia, but again, their only loss is to Georgia, and they were competitive in the first half. So I think Clemson is probably the best team in the ACC right now. Number 7, LSU. Again, they play A&M this week. They had a good win this week over Arkansas, and minus that loss to USC, LSU has looked good. Number 6, Miami. They kind of not struggled. Louisville is a good team, but they did have a close call with Louisville, back and forth game in the second half. But Miami still undefeated. Now, I have them below these 5 teams above them just because of resume, who the other teams have beaten or played. But Miami, as of right now, I think they're in good shape to make the ACC championship. Number 5, Texas, kind of sort of got dominated against Georgia. Now, their defense looked really good against Georgia, I think, but their offense looked bad. Steve Sarkisian didn't have a good plan going in. And my worry for Texas is making that quarterback switch in the middle of the game and then going back to Quinn Ewers. You might have just screwed up your season. I would have just let it ride out with Quinn. Obviously, it was not his fault. I mean, the line was getting worked all night. Receivers weren't getting open. So regardless of who you put in a quarterback, it's not going to make a difference. And I wonder if he divides the locker room, divides the fan base with benching Quinn and then going right back to him 2 series after. It's just stupid in my opinion. I think Sark may have screwed up Texas' season right there because their defense played good against Georgia, had multiple turnovers, and they just lost the field position battle all night. And that was really the reason for the outcome here. Number 4, Ohio State. They have that close loss to Oregon. Haven't played anybody super competitive, as a good football team yet. But that's going to happen the more we go into Big Ten play. But as of right now, Ohio State at 4, 3, Penn State. So the reason I have them above Ohio State and Texas is just because they have a better win. Illinois, I think, is a better win than any of them that Ohio State or Texas have. So that's why Penn State gets the nudge here, and they are still undefeated. So Penn State, as of right now, in Big Ten play, is in the driver's seat. Number 2, Georgia. Again, good win over Texas. Their only loss coming to Alabama, but they have beaten Texas and Clemson. So Georgia, I think, is legit once again. And then number 1, Oregon. They have that win over Ohio State. They have a tough few weeks coming up with competition in Big Ten play, so we'll see how they do. That's kind of been my question with Oregon. I think they are good any given night, but being in the Big Ten compared to the Pac-12, it's tougher week in and week out. So I think this is where it's going to kind of make or break Oregon season over these next few weeks. We'll see if they can make it out unscathed, but we'll see. But that is this week's top 25. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.